today we're going to discuss soil, and this is something that everybody has experience with, something that whether you're a farmer, whether you help your parents garden, or whether you've just played outside, you should know what soil is. And you should know that it actually is extremely important to our ecosystem, and without it, and without protecting it, we could have some very, very terrible effects. So, before we even get started, I'm going to say that I don't have very much of an agriculture background, and yes, these are some methods that are important and some important information. However, I'm not an expert. I do not know the economic side of agriculture and different things like that. So, just so you know about that. All right, so soil. Soil is made out of organic materials. Organic materials are basically anything that comes from a living thing. So plants and animals die in the soil, and it creates this really rich, um, these rich minerals. It makes the soil very rich of minerals. All right. So this picture, you can kind of see the grass, the wood chips, different things like that. This one, people in their gardens and in their plants, they might put organic materials in, like they might put lettuce, coffee grounds, anything like that to help with their plants. And then, of course, over here where you might have longer grass, more plants, and mulch, that will create a lot of organic materials where if you overtill, that would cause a lot of problems. Now, soil. Soil is not just dirt. Soil is actually made out of 45% minerals, 25% air and water, and then 5% of those organic materials that we just talked about. So, soil is half air and water, which is kind of interesting. And soil is everywhere. We can have soil in the rainforests, we can have soil in the deserts, and we can have soil here in the North Dakota. It just depends on how rich it is. It depends on all kinds of different things, and we'll learn about those now. So, soil is not just what we see. We are only seeing the O horizon and maybe the A horizon when we're talking soil horizons. Soil horizons are basically the layers that you cut soil. If you cut deep into the earth, you would be able to see all of these layers. So we start off with O, which is your humus. And then you go into your A horizon, which is filled with topsoil. And this topsoil is filled with decayed and organic materials, so those dead animals, microorganisms, different things like that. It also soaks and holds water, which is very, very important. The soil is where we grow our plants in. In the B horizon, this is called your subsoil. It is fine, it's filled with fine particles of rocks. And then you finally get down to C, which is filled with weathered rock fragments. And there's very little plant life. Down in the parent material, this would be your bedrock. And your bedrock is unweathered rock, so it's just very, very filled with rock. And this soil can be different all over the place when we're talking our topsoil and our organic, our humus and stuff like that. So we have clay, loam, sand, and silt. Those are the 4 types of soil, and they range all over the place. If you look on this map, it's very interesting. Now, if you look down in Florida, where it's very close to the equator, it's very tropical climate, we have a lot of sand. And then there's also a big patch of organic material where you can assume there's a lot of swamp life that might be dying down there. And very interesting. Down here, where you have a lot of the tobacco, the cotton, different farming like that, you have a lot of loomy sand and a lot of silt loam and different things like that. Again, same thing with the East Coast. It's very similar to down here. Then you get to the West Coast, and that's kind of all over the place, but it's very filled with sandy loam, with clay loam, and different things like that. Let's look at North Dakota. So for the most part, we're just filled with plain old loam. In our corner, we're pretty close to having silt loam, and we might have some loam. We might have a little clay loam and a little sandy loam. But for the most part, our whole state is just filled with loam. And it depends on what biome we are in as what our soil is like and how usable our soil is. And let's look at these different biomes. So we are in the temperate grassland. Temperate means temporary. So in the summer we're grassland, but in the winter we're basically an icy tundra. And our soil is very, very rich. Up here in the polar ice, they probably do not have, or their soil is frozen, so it's kind of hard to know if it's rich or not, or if it's usable. And it's probably not very rich because it doesn't have very much organic material because not many plants grow there. Where we have the tropical forests over here, where they have a lot of vegetation, a lot of organic material that can die and plenish that forest area. Um, Also, the desert is so dry, it does not have a lot of that organic material to die and make that soil filled with minerals. Now, in the United States, we're mainly filled with forests, with um, deserts, and with grasslands. So let's start talking about forests first of all. Forests are used to heavy rainfall. That heavy rainfall forces minerals to go deep down into the ground. And so, because of this, plants that have shallow roots don't usually survive. Now, forests are usually seen in the eastern part of the United States, but not only in the eastern part. One quick tidbit about forests. So, we know that forests have rich minerals kind of deep down, and people in poor places in different countries often cut down those rainforests, cut down trees to plant their crops, and they try to make a living off of that. Now, for the first couple of years, they work really well because they have all of those minerals. But the problem is with this biome, with this ecosystem, a forest is used to having a lot of roots and a lot of organic material dying and falling into the ground and soaking up and different things like that. And if you cut all of those trees down and you get rid of that root system, that's going to cause a lot of problems. And eventually, that soil will erode away and it will not be usable at all. All of those nutrients will be gone because there's no nutrients to get to go back in there. There are also different problems with the ecosystem. So if you think about rainforests are used to a lot of rain, so imagine how much your rich material would wash away as all of that rain is not soaked in anymore with trees. It's getting soaked into your crops. So that can be very dangerous, and it's a huge reason why our rainforests are getting cut down, and it's a problem that needs to be stopped. Now, we also have deserts. If you think down over by New Mexico, by Arizona, different things like that, and deserts are filled with sandy soil. There is not much humus because there's not many plants that are dying and are made into humus. Now, deserts are actually rich in minerals. The water must be piped if you want to grow crops there, because obviously there isn't very much moisture. The problem with soil is because there's not much humus in the desert. If there is water or rain, it will get washed away very quickly because that humus will not be able to soak up that water. Now let's look at good old North Dakota. So we are obviously in the grasslands or the prairies, and our soil is very, very, very rich in humus. I mean, look at all of this living material that we have everywhere. Now, the humus is important because it holds the water, so those minerals aren't washed way deep into the ground like it is in the rainforest. Now, soil can be damaged or wasted away through erosion with wind or water. And it's very, very, very important for roots to keep that soil in place, or else we won't have any nutrients and eventually our soil will not be able to grow in. So if you take this example of the dirty 30s, so 1930s, in North Dakota, we had that very dry weather and all of our plant life was dead. And the problem is this happened for so many years in a row that there was no organic material to die or anything like that, no living things to die and make organic material. So our soil was pretty much worthless. So now it's very, very important to keep our plants healthy, keep them living, keep them that cycle going where they have that organic material, they keep having their nutrients and different things like that. And yeah, so we definitely learned our lesson from the 1930s. Now, soil can also be polluted through different factors other than erosion. And those could be through mining, where those chemicals are seeping through the soil, making it unusable, through agricultural chemicals or lawn care chemicals, where you were spraying your crops or your grass for different types of insects and stuff like that. And that could damage your soil and make it unusable. And last, and probably one of the most important things, is trying to reduce our use of plastics, because all of this plastic eventually gets thrown into the dump or the land, the dump, and that just makes our soil unusable. Like, you can't grow crops under there. Now, there are some ways to conserve our soil, though, just like how we can conserve water and conserve energy and different things like that. One way is to keep our soil fertilized by putting those organic materials in there, constantly giving it those different materials, having plants growing. If you have to feed it organic materials, do that. The next one that many farmers are probably familiar with is crop rotation, which is basically where you would grow a different crop in one space every couple years. So basically, you might have soy one year, and then the next year you'll have corn, or you might have wheat, different things like that. Another way to conserve the soil is through strip farming. So basically, farmers plant crops in their rows, and then they plant grass between those rows to prevent the soil from eroding. In places that have a lot of hills and a lot of different elevation levels, they might try to do contour plowing. And this could be very important for them. So basically, they have to plow across the slope instead of up and down to prevent the rainwater from flowing down the hill. So basically, if it rains, all of that water is just going to flow down. But because of these different levels, the rain will be held onto each level and it won't rush so bad. And this is important because if the rain rushes down the hill, it's going to take all of that rich topsoil down with it and erode it away. Another thing that a lot of North Dakota farmers are pretty familiar with is having windbreaks or planting rows of trees to prevent wind from blowing the topsoil away. And last but not least, stuff that you guys can do is to volunteer, pick up the trash, pick up all of those plastic materials that ruin the soil. You can educate others, tell people different healthier practices to have their soil and stuff like that, especially with lawn care and gardening. And last but not least, you can send letters to our local or state government about what you think should be done. And those are all very important things. Now, soil may just seem like dirt, right? It's just kind of boring dirt. But without soil, we don't have our food. And North Dakota and our plains, we feed a massive population. And without our rich soil and our healthy farming practices, our civilization cannot survive. So it is very important to advocate, to do what's right, to learn healthier ways of conserving our soil and our crop and different things like that. So make sure you keep in mind that there's different ways that you can do your part, especially when you get older.